And then it took me about the fourth watch to realize that I just don't give a shit. So Time just put out this very, very sycophantic, icky, almost bootlicking interview with Christopher Nolan that doubles down and confirms some of these more controversial choices, I guess you could say, that we saw in the trailer. And it also raises completely new ones that nobody had been talking about until this interview dropped. So it's like it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm not exactly sure what the objective is here anymore.
Eric, did you just take a crap on my desk?
The interview also gives us some clues as to how the movie is going to go when it is released in theaters. And I'm not particularly hopeful whatsoever. But before we get into this interview, I need to tell you guys the absolute biggest problem I had with the Odyssey trailer, because I watched it several times. I sat on it for a few days. I really digested it because I didn't want to just crap on this trailer for the sake of crapping on something.
Eric, did you just take a crap on my desk?
But a lot of people had raised a lot of very fair criticism, some of which I'm bothered by, some of which I'm less bothered by. But I'm about to tell you my absolute biggest problem with this trailer after having watched it about half a dozen times. It is not that Lupita Nyong'o is playing Helen of Troy. It is not that Elliot Page might be playing Achilles, potentially. It is not that there is iron armor in the Bronze Age. I wouldn't have even noted that. You're history buffs. I don't even. It's not even that the movie is the film equivalent of a sad beige living room. It's not even the ridiculous American English, although I gotta tell you, listening to Robert Pattinson say daddy is just, that's enough for me for one lifetime.
Let's make this kitty purr.
No. The worst part of this trailer for me, the thing that really unsettled me after watching it over and over and over, was that it was so damn boring. It was boring. I had to go back and I had to rewatch other trailers from other epics and other historical dramas to make sure that it wasn't just me, because I watched it over and over again and I'm thinking to myself, am I just not paying, I must not be paying close enough attention. I'm not getting the plot of the story here because I'm not the one paying attention to it. And it turns out that no, I'm not at a certain point. You just start to tune out. You have to pay such focused attention to understand what's going on in the trailer. And then it took me about the fourth watch to realize that I just don't give a shit. Nothing is explained. Nothing is set up. No stakes are raised. There is absolutely nothing in this trailer to get you excited for what is supposed to be the blockbuster movie of the summer. Literally, there is nothing. I went back and I rewatched the Troy trailer, which is very funny because all of the comments underneath the Troy trailer are talking about the Odyssey trailer and how they needed to go to this trailer in order to wash their eyeballs from the Odyssey trailer. So that just confirms right off the bat what I'm knowing instinctually is that the trailer just isn't interesting. It's not that I'm not paying attention, but to some extent it is. You stop paying attention because the trailer is 2.5 damn minutes long. The trailer for Troy gets in and explains that there is a war happening over the most desirable woman in the entire world. And there's even a line in there that's like, once you unleash Achilles, there's no pulling him back. It sets up who all of these people are. It tells you what the stakes are. It teases what the outcome could be, which you could also just look up. But you walk away from that trailer going, I'm excited to see this film. I can't wait to see what happens. Never has a trailer said so much and accomplished so little in 2.5 minutes, in a minute longer than it took Gladiator or Troy to spell out the entire plot and all of the characters in it. It's dull. It's dull. And people who love Christopher Nolan are afraid to say it, but I'm not afraid to say it because I have been bored by Christopher Nolan's last few movies. I'll be honest with you guys. I thought The Dark Knight was as close to a perfect movie as you could get. I walked out of Inception going, I have to see that movie again. And then as it started to go on and on and on, and I might get some flack for this, but I walked out of Dunkirk, I walked out of Interstellar, and I thought, I don't need to see those movies again. It's getting more and more cerebral and more boring with each passing movie that Nolan does. There, I said it. Come for me in the comments. Come for the throat. It's fine. But I am right when it comes to this trailer. There is absolutely nothing. The whole trailer opens with Odysseus and Charlize Theron on an island somewhere. And she's like, what do you remember? And he's like, I remember my wife and my family. And you don't know who she is in the trailer whatsoever. I have to look up who Charlize Theron plays. And this is what it says. In the Odyssey, Charlize Theron plays Calypso, the mythical nymph who detains Odysseus on the island of Unpronounceable for 7 years. The film features her as a central figure holding the shipwrecked Odysseus captive, offering him immortality to be her husband. The Odyssey is a 10-year journey, y'all. So 7 years of that is just him hanging out on the island with Charlize Theron? Is this the epic we signed up for? Oh my God, wake me when it's over. Hit the snooze button. Jesus. And here's the other biggest problem I had with the trailer. I didn't care about any of these characters. It was assumed in the trailer that I would already know who Odysseus is and already love him, like already be completely and totally immersed and familiar with him as a character. How would I know that? Am I this like, is everybody else just like completely and totally absorbed in ancient Greek mythology and I'm the only one left out?
Who is that lavatory linksman, Smithers?
Homer Simpson, sir, one of the fork and spoon operators from Sector 7G.
That is why we're counting on these films. That's why we're counting on these trailers for these films to set it up, to remind us, to sort of take us along back into this journey, this historical saga, and basically educate us through the dialogue, through the narration, while you entertain us. It doesn't do that. It just assumes that we know and we already appreciate this. Oh, you don't know Odysseus? You don't know that he is the person behind the Trojan horse? Why, yes, he's actually a very clever fellow. Yes, he's got a wit about him, but he's also got some ego. He's a very developed, nuanced character. I can't believe you don't know this. And that's just how it goes. There's no stakes to be set in the entire trailer. You get the sense that he wants to get home to his wife Anne Hathaway and to his son Tobey Maguire. What's his name? Tom Holland. So that's it. Some guy that I don't know and I don't care about is trying to make it home to these other people that I don't care about. And her house is full of guys who want to marry her and take over the throne. But like, you watch the Gladiator trailer and it is just like, my name is Maximus Decimus Meridius. I serve the one true emperor, which again, just immediately in the opening lines signals to you, the audience, that there's been a betrayal, right? And then he says that he is a husband to a murdered wife, a father to a murdered son, and he will exact his revenge. Boom. There's the story. There's the plot. There's the stakes. Tells you everything you need to know in a minute less than it took Christopher Nolan to say nothing in this entire trailer. There is nothing. It's really frustrating because I really have always loved how intellectual Christopher Nolan is. I've always really admired how he mixes very intelligent, emotional screenwriting with pure spectacle. The man makes very smart, brilliant characters accessible to mainstream audiences. And that is the reason why he is so famous, why he has achieved Spielberg level status, because he doesn't cheapen it. He doesn't just say, oh, yeah, we'll cut corners here. We'll do this. We'll, pull a Stranger Things season 5 and cut it all on green screen. He doesn't do that. He's a purist when it comes to cinema. I really respect that and I appreciate it. But what is missing from this trailer, and what I expect will probably be missing from huge chunks of the film, is the leading the audience to the point, the setting up the audience for that payoff, something that has existed in his previous movies. He's kind of stopped making these movies for mainstream audiences, and he's really started making them more for this insular bubble that really cares more about the artistry of it, or cares more about like these very obscure cinematic elements, or just it's so cerebral. You know what I mean? Like everything has to be so meta into itself that it's just starting to give me a headache. And I'm getting this sense with the Odyssey that it's almost talking down to me. You don't know everything about the Trojan War. You don't know that this is taking place in the Bronze Age, which is when everything falls apart for Greece. How do you not know this? These are the stakes. You're the one who's uneducated. So in my opinion, if this movie fails, it's because Christopher Nolan just isn't making the kind of films that reach mass audiences anymore. He's given up on that. He is making films for himself and his little audience that thinks that they know more than you, because that is the case with this trailer, and I think that's going to be the case with this movie. But let's get into the Time interview, because this is what's going to give us major clues that this is the case, that I am right, because I'm pretty much never wrong.
Yeah, that works.
So let me walk you through all the clues that I picked up on in this Time article just to support my argument here, shall we? So here's the post for the interview that they put up on X. The Odyssey is arguably the biggest film of Christopher Nolan's career. It may also be the summer blockbuster the entertainment industry needs right now. Needs for what? Like box office revenue? I guess so. That's why they have a summer blockbuster. But like, to do what? You know what I mean? Like, what does the entertainment industry need from a highly cerebral interpretation of a Greek epic? Like, what are you saying that like you want to reestablish Hollywood as the chief industry for storytelling? I don't think it's going to get you there, because he's already made too many woke weird choices that it's not going to give Hollywood any credibility when it comes to modern storytelling. It just isn't. So the author of this article, she describes Nolan by reputation as a solemn figure, a no-nonsense puzzle box auteur in a crisp waistcoat, a flask of tea tucked into his jacket pocket. Maybe it's his movies with their intricate, sometimes confounding plots. Maybe it's because he operates with intimidating efficiency on set. Maybe it's that he's notoriously private. Yet over nearly 2 hours and 3 steaming mugs of tea, the spoiler-averse director is unexpectedly forthcoming. When I edge into territory I fear might trigger prickliness, he shrugs, says, fair enough, and delves earnestly into production decisions that have launched 1,000 Reddit posts. That's very cute. That's a good reference. There you go. Every time my cup runs low, he ferries a refill from the tea cart. When I spill, he reassures me as he blots up. What's with all the tea? Comparing Emily Wilson, E.V. Rue, and Robert Fagel's translations of the Odyssey, I feel less like I'm interviewing a director than sitting in office hours with a particularly approachable professor. He has studied the period, and the film is aware of its historical moment. The Trojan War marks the end of the Bronze Age, and Greece is about to plunge into a dark age of fallen kingdoms and lost literacy. These are our stakes, people. This is what we have to work with here. Did you not get that from the trailer? No? Oh, also in this article, they make this mention of like how they put all the money towards the screen. There's like this segment from Anne Hathaway where she's talking about how she and all the other A-listers are staying in a budget hotel on this island of Greece because it's not about the ego. It's about, putting all the money towards the production of the film. And it's just so, they take themselves so seriously. Like she and like she you can tell how highly she thinks of herself and these other actors. Like this is the sacrifice that they've made, that they're not staying at the Four Seasons to shoot this movie. Nothing about like the salaries that they're going to pull in from this or their split from the box office. No. This is grassroots, right? Like this is all about teamwork. So then there's these two kind of big reveals in the interview that everybody's been talking about. One is they're not going to use an orchestra for the Odyssey score. And two, they're casting Travis Scott, I think, as like a bard or something like that. So Nolan says, I cast him because I wanted to nod towards the idea that this story has been handed down as oral poetry, which is analogous to rap. But then when he goes and he talks about the movie not having this orchestral score, Ludwig Göransson says about not using the orchestra. He says, it's not like the orchestra existed back then. So which is it here? Are we doing a historically accurate Greek mythic epic film? Or are we race and gender swapping characters for some sort of liberal modern retelling of the story? There's a mention in the interview about a subversion of expectations when it comes to these gladiator type of films. And anytime I hear the phrase subversion of expectations, all I can think about is Rian freaking Johnson and The Last Jedi and how that subverted everybody's expectations right out of the box office. This is going to hubris now, guys. Like, this is going to Nolan just saying, I'm Christopher Nolan. I've decided that this is creative and this shall be historically accurate. And you're like, there is no pattern to this. Like, either do a completely modern retelling, like the Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio in it, or do something completely and historically accurate down to the costuming, which they also didn't do. So it's going to this hubris that he has, where you can tell that whatever he's passionate about in the moment, that's what he's directing his energy towards. If he doesn't want something or does want something, he'll use an excuse here to, basically defend that decision. But all it's coming down to is what he feels he wants to do and what he feels he can get away with, because he's Christopher Nolan. Arriving on July 17th, the Odyssey follows the Greek hero behind the Trojan horse on his 10-year journey home from war. Again, could have used a refresher on all of this. Odysseus encounters a cyclops, sea monsters, and a sorceress who transforms men into animals, all rendered with minimal CGI and maximum ambition. Did you get much of that from the trailer? Because I got a lot of yapping. I got dad. I got daddy. I got Anne Hathaway's emotional outburst. I got a lot of ocean. That's what I got from it. But here's the real red flag, you guys. You ready for this? Brace yourselves. But it's ultimately a character study. It would have been enough to strap Matt Damon, who plays Odysseus, to a real ship's mast and sail him past sirens. In Nolan's version, Damon also has to perform an existential crisis as those sirens psychoanalyze him through song. Like the Trojan horse, the Odyssey can be enjoyed as pure spectacle, or it can be cracked open to reveal something deeply human. The script was very specific in what he was doing, Damon says. He's very faithful to Homer because that's not somebody you rewrite. But thematically, what he looked at was really interesting. We are going to watch a lot of yapping. We are going to watch a lot of women talking down to men. There's that whole one section of the trailer where basically Charlize Theron is telling him, or Calypso, I guess, is telling Odysseus that he wants to control everything, but he can't control this, or he can't change this. And then you cut over to Anne Hathaway saying, like, the world as it existed is gone. It's going to be very, very, very thematically feminine. It's going to be a shit ton of yapping. And I'm bored already. I'm bored. I do not really care about somebody getting psychoanalyzed by a siren for 7 freaking years on an island. Where's the Cyclops? There was like a flash of it towards the end of the trailer. There was a little bit of it. There's like one shot of the whirlpool that he gets sucked into. But like, where is the action? Where is the tension? Where is the drama? No. You just want that stuff because you're not cultured.
Just as I've got them reeling, I go in with a jab of Dorothy Parker. Wit has truth in it. Wisecracking is merely calisthenics with words. Pow!
The power of character development in achingly slow, long, drawn-out scenes that never go anywhere.
I go in for the kill with Twain. Wild. Twain. Mencken.
It's not a fight, it's an execution!
That's your fault. Not Christopher Nolan's fault. Yeah, and then he gives us a whole deep dive into Odysseus, which again, we're not getting from the trailer. This is just him reflecting on all of his research that he's invested into Odysseus that I think we're just expected to know. So here's this part. The Homeric hero most of us remember from high school is the crafty guy behind the Trojan horse. Guys, I barely remember high school, let alone Odysseus from high school. Do you remember this? Anyways, that's your fault.
Who is that bookworm, Smithers?
Homer Simpson, sir.
Simpson, eh? How very strange. His job description clearly specifies an illiterate.
But he's also arrogant and duplicitous. A line in Emily Wilson's translation sums him up. Lying Odysseus replied, "I will tell you the truth completely." For Nolan, one of the hardest things about adapting the Odyssey is that in the Iliad, Odysseus has a relatively minor role. Can you imagine? Odysseus had a minor role in the Iliad. A lot of the characteristics of Odysseus that can be really admirable in a supporting character, like being a little bit clever, being a little bit slick, when your hero is like that, it doesn't always work, he says. There's a reason that in Star Wars you've got Han Solo, but you've also got Luke Skywalker, a heroic figure that's a little more pure and transparent. So the challenge was to be true to the complexity of Odysseus, but make him relatable for the audience. You know, on its surface, I don't have a problem with that. I love complex characters. I love character development. That's like my whole specialty, is looking at really cool characters, interesting characters, dialogue, character arcs, development, all of that. So if you can put it out there on the big screen, tell us who this guy is, and really make us invested in him and care about him, then I'm all for that. One of the best, most complex characters of all time, Tony Soprano. There's an almost anti-hero element that Nolan is describing here of how to capture that and make this guy an admirable figure that we want to follow, not just through war, but to his entire journey home to get home to his wife and son. Entirely possible to pull off. However, not a single trace of that made it into the trailer. He was just trudging. He was just trudging around, and he was the most boring person on the entire screen. I don't think he emoted once. And it's going to be even more difficult to convince us to care that much about his journey if he's not the central figure. And I'm telling you right now, guys, he's not going to be. Because here's the next part of this interview. What compels Odysseus and compels audiences to root for him is his love for his wife. Penelope waits 20 years for a husband everybody else thinks is dead. She manages to repeatedly outwit the 108 suitors plotting to court her, murder her son, and usurp Odysseus' throne. Hathaway was pleasantly surprised when she read Nolan's script and saw that the queen doesn't just sit around and weep. No, of course not. It's 2026. It's amazing. It's shocking that you could write a fully developed female character. And Hathaway says, there's this impression of Penelope that she's kind of the picture of modesty. She's the picture of patience, says Hathaway. I'm going to stop you right there, Anne. I don't have an impression of Penelope. I don't know who the F Penelope is. I don't know who she is. I don't remember her from anything. Tell me who she is. Show me who she is. I don't have an impression of her. Stop assuming that we know so much about this story.
Who is that firebrand, Smithers?
That's Homer Simpson, sir.
Simpson, huh? New man?
Actually, sir, he thwarted your campaign for governor. You ran over his son. He saved the plant from meltdown. His wife painted you in the nude.
Doesn't ring a bell.
And I said Anne, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, you've written someone who is full of fury, and you seem to be implying that she's actually Odysseus's equal. What other movie did something like that? Oh yeah, 300. This Penelope matches her husband, not just in intellect, but in passion. I found her to be this volcano of a human that was always simmering, and it was really fun when she finally exploded. This is who we're going to see on the screen. This movie is not going to be about Odysseus. It is going to be about the women in this movie. Because this is the nail in the coffin, you guys. You ready? Talks about Matt Damon. Damon knew a handful of scenes that he and Hathaway shot in Los Angeles would be crucial to the audience's investment in their relationship. When we wrapped in LA, Chris said to me, "It's ours to lose now," said Damon. "We still had to go shoot in Iceland and Scotland and the Calypso stuff on a desert beach, but we knew we had the emotional center." So maybe you did. Maybe that is like the cornerstone of it is their relationship. And I really hope that they can build that out and feed that to us, because I'm not getting that from the trailer. The trailer is failing to hook me in any way. And this interview is doubling down on the cerebral parts, the parts that assume what we're supposed to know, the subverting the expectations parts, the cherry picking, and like the sort of half-hearted defense of those creative decisions on Christopher Nolan's part. I have very, very low hopes for this film. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. The problem is just that Nolan, for me, is becoming a little too cerebral. It is becoming more and more about maybe the artistry of it, or like the cinema of it, or like these big complex philosophical ideas that he wants to share. And he's got like a team around him that thinks whatever he does is absolutely positively brilliant. So he can just kind of put it out there and rest on the laurels of his previous work and how much everybody has loved that, and just the assumption that everybody will go see more of Christopher Nolan's films. And I think that worked for Oppenheimer, but for me, these films are getting more and more boring, less interesting, as it feels like less and less I am being talked to like an adult by someone who is my peer. I'm being told a really good story by an intellectual who can speak to the intellectual part of all of us as the audience. And it's starting to feel more and more like we're being talked down to by someone who thinks that he's better than us. And that just signals to me, along with a lot of these interesting creative decisions, it signals to me this Hollywood creep, this creep of the industry that inch by inch says, you don't know what a good story is. We know what a good story is. If you don't like it, that's your fault. We'll tell you when something is good because we're Hollywood and we know better than you. Feels a little elitist. But hey, these are just my thoughts. I could be totally and completely wrong. Please come for me in the comments. Share your thoughts. Let's either get excited or let's get anxious together. And if you like this video, please like, hype, subscribe so you can get more of my content. Thank you so much, guys. As always, I'll see you in the next one.